been a while, folks, but we're back. We need each other. It's been a while because I've been waiting for something like this that we have here today. I'm so excited about this guest. She has such a special place in my heart. So I'm just going to read her amazing bio. So tune in, listen. We need each other. Dana King is a classical figurative sculptor who creates public monuments of black bodies in bronze. I love that. King's work explores a subversive concept in a traditional form. She rescues everyday Black American heroines and heroes from unjust obscurity and then ennobles their tenacity and courage through figurative sculpture, recontextualizing a medium often used to elevate Eurocentric and white supremacist statuary. Across countless generations, African elders and their descendants have communicated culture, history, and wisdom through storytelling. Dana King continues that tradition in bronze, resurrecting love and truth from America's buried past. Intense research shapes such memories, empowering King to create art that invites people to understand themselves and their lives in a connected and compelling way. King's public sculptures are in the Bay Area and across the country. In addition to her most recent bronze bust of Dr. Huey Newton installed in West Oakland, California, so happy I had a chance to be there. Her life-size bronze artwork is in South Berkeley, California, New Haven, Connecticut, and at the Memorial for Peace and Justice in Montgomery, Alabama. She also just installed and dedicated Monumental Reckoning in San Francisco's Golden Gate Park, the first African American woman to create a sculptural installation in the park representing the history of African descendants. King prefers sculptures because they inhabit space, and space is power. She prefers sculptures because they inhabit space, and space is power. She believes sculpture provides an opportunity to shape culturally significant memories that determine how African descendants are publicly held and remembered. Equity and justice are integral to Dana King's art practice. Ah, Dana. Welcome, 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 welcome to We Need Each Other. I'm so happy to have you here.
I'm so
I'm wondering how does it feel to be this version of Dana King?
Woo!
What's your experience of it?
This is my third career, right?
Yeah.
And I'm 61. I've been sculpting for a little over 10 years. I had
10 years?
Yeah.
Wow.
That's it. I had no idea I could sculpt. None. I took a weekend course with a master sculptor.
How did that get started?
It was incredible. So a friend asked me, she wanted to take this course, and it was in Sacramento, and I live in Oakland, and she didn't want to drive there by herself, and so I said, I'll go. Why not? Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And so it was just the weekend, right? By Sunday, I drove back by myself, told her she had to go on her own. I walk in, and I tell this man, listen, I can't stay. I'm full. I got no more room. I just have to go and do this work. And he was like, okay. And I turned around and left. And that was the beginning of it. And I worked in my house at the kitchen table. My first sculpture was my then teenage daughter, who so did not want to pose for me. So it's like, and so I still have that sculpture.
Do you?
Yeah. And because we all start from nothing. We all start at the same point. And I think it's important to always remember that you know, whether you're speaking with someone who's just starting out, or they're trying to find their way, no matter what it is. Look, we were all there, and it's an important reminder to not forget that.
Absolutely.
So that's how it's
you know. I knew you. So it's interesting. As I was preparing for this episode, I thought, well, I knew her when she was an account executive. Was she something before that? You were working at ABC in Los Angeles, and then all of a sudden, you were on the air in Los Angeles, and we're like, wait, what? How'd you do that? And then, when I knew you more personally in life, you were painting, and your painting was beautiful. And then I come to find out you're doing the sculpture. So, how do you recreate? I think it's a lesson, and I don't know if you could even explain it, but you do recreate yourself. And I think a lot of people could use that skill set because I think people stay stuck.
Yeah.
Often. When something is calling them, like you said, you left and you said, "I got to go do this work,"
Yeah, but still, it didn't happen. I mean, I did it, but I didn't make it my profession for a couple more years. But I think like I've always had goals. Like I had a 10-year goal and a 5-year goal, and now I don't have those goals anymore. But within the time period of the goals that I set, I allowed myself to take different paths within them. And I sold airtime for 5 years at a high level. We were in LA, the second largest market in the country, and we sold mainstream media airtime. Know how to read a rating book and deal with media buyers and the whole thing. And I carried an $8 million list when I was in ad sales. And I wanted to run a TV station. That was my goal. That was my 10-year goal while I was a sales rep. And I just happened to have the kind of boss, his name was John Severino, who liked to move his people around, Seth. There's some wild days in ad sales land, but Seth liked to move his people around, and one day he did not renew the contract of the only African American reporter he had on the air, Channel 7 in Los Angeles. And then he panicked, like, the community's going to come after me, and what am I going to do? What am I going to say? And his secretary, a woman named Verla Ramel, said, well, why don't you hire Dana?
Seriously,
that's how it happened. That's how it went down. And so he calls me into his office, and this is the true story. He calls me into his office and he sits me down and he says, "Listen, I want you to be a reporter." And I said, "Where?" And he said,
in what was it, the second largest market in the country?
And the number one station in that market.
And the number one station. Right.
So I'm like, what are you talking about?
We're like, okay.
Where? Like on radio, maybe? He said, here. And I said, no, I'm not interested. And he said, I don't think you're hearing me. He said, I want you to be a reporter. And I was like, oh, okay, I get it. Oh, all right. And so we negotiated this thing. I said, because what if I don't like it? I'd like my job back. And if you don't like me in this position, I'd like my job back. Right?
Yes, right.
And he said, okay. And so we agreed on 18 months. And then I said, well, how hard could it be? Because you're just doing this, right?
Yeah, right.
Let me tell you something, Fran. It's the hardest thing I have ever had to do, really. It was hard learning how to be on TV. And I did it for 25 years.
Yes, then you were an anchor in San Francisco.
Yeah, but I was
in the evening news.
Yeah, I was a reporter for a long time. I worked at the network, and then I had a daytime show, and they canceled that. And I was going to leave the business because I was like, oh, this is bleh. And I got a call from San Francisco, the CBS station out here, and he invited me to come and work there. I mean, it was just like that. I'm like, I put the phone down and said, can you hang on 1 second? And I yell at my then husband. I'm like, hey, you want to move to San Francisco? And there's a beat. And he was like, sure. I mean, that's how come my life has gone. Seriously.
Right?
And sure enough, man, we moved out here.
It's beautiful.
And I worked on the air here for 15 years. But I did not want to grow old on TV because I did not want some man, and it would be a man, because I never worked for a woman. It would be a man who would say to me, you know, Dana, you need to pull this back and, you know, lift this and maybe lose a couple pounds while you're at it. No. No. That's just...
And you had a thing about your white hair on air, right? As I recall.
Yeah. I cannot tell you the whole truth.
You were standing up for your rights.
I have an NDA, but I can allude to the truth of it.
Okay.
So, you know, it's a long story, but, and I'll give you the brief synopsis. I went to Africa. I went to northern Ghana, and I went there because there are segments of the population who believe in witchcraft. And and what happens is that when a woman can no longer be of value to the community, to the tribe, meaning a menopausal woman, she is run out of her home and called a witch. And should she survive that, because many don't, she ends up in a witches' camp, of which I visited 3 of them. And I got to tell you, it was deep. One guy scared me so much that I was afraid I wouldn't get out of there with my soul. A witch doctor. And so when I came back, I tell my boss, I'm like, these women are my age. They are run out of their homes at my age. And when they are no longer of any value, I said, but here in this, you know, developed nation, that's the age when we are at the height of our power.
Yes.
And why am I hiding it, trying to look younger than I am?
Right.
I said, so I'm just letting you know, I'm going to let my hair go gray. Dude says to me, he listens to my whole story. He says, I hear you. He said, but I can't let you do that. And I have really short hair. You remember, Fran? I had, a number 5 on that.
Right.
And so I went home that night, because if I'd have let it go gray, I would have just stopped dyeing it. And in 2 weeks, it would have been, you know, halfway gray. So I went home and I dyed my hair. And I dry my hair, take off the towel, I look in the mirror, and I say to myself, that's the last time. This is the last time I'm dyeing my hair. I made a commitment to myself, and then ultimately to the viewers, who are mostly my age, right? Predominantly women, 50 plus. And I let it go gray. And I never felt so in my own body my whole life. Yeah. My whole life.
Yeah.
So that boss got fired.
Did he really?
It wasn't because of my hair. It wasn't because of my hair. But he got fired. And the first day my new boss came in, he called me into his office and basically told me my hair was a problem. And that's as far as I'm going to go.
His first day.
His first full day.
His first day.
Yeah. And needless to say, the end of the conversation, and I wish I could tell you the conversation, because you would be like, no, he didn't. I'd be like, yeah, he did. But
I can imagine.
I told him at the end of the conversation, look, you do what you have to do. It's your candy store. You come back at me and make one pass, and if that is not acceptable, then we're going to have to go to court. So they came back at me, made a pass, and I was gone in 7 days. 7 days.
Wow.
And I was so grateful. I was so grateful. And I knew at that moment, I knew in my heart, because I had put it out in the universe that I was going to retire at 50. I decided that when Sev first hired me at age of 27. I'm not doing this my whole life. I want to retire at 50. And I was 52. I missed it by 2 years. But it was time to go. The business had changed. I found myself saying things like, when I was a reporter, why we never
Yeah.
or we
Yeah.
always.
Yeah.
And I thought,
Right.
you gotta go.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm grateful. And I know that, I felt like I had put that out in the universe and asked for it. And here it had landed in my lap. And if I said no, it would never come to pass again.
Yes. Yeah.
So if you're asking for something, if there's something that you want and you have put it out there, keep your eyes open for how it arrives.
Yes.
And then say yes.
Because people miss it a lot.
Mm-hmm.
People miss it because of fear. People miss it because of all kinds of reasons.
Right. It's not the right time.
It's what I love about you is that you flow. You flow. And sometimes, I don't know, maybe to you may not feel like you're flowing, but you flow, And it's something, we need that skill. We need to understand more how to do that, especially in the times that we're living in.
Right.
We flow.
Right.
That's
a beautiful description. Thank you. And it is that way. You have to. It's setting yourself up. I think it's honoring, at least at whatever phase and point in your life you're at, honoring that, putting 100% into that, and setting yourself up for any kind of change that might come your way, whether it's from you or whether it comes to you, whether it's good or whether it's not good.
Right. Yes.
But you have to be ready to pivot, to juke the system, right?
Yeah, right. I just don't think the majority of people do that. I just don't think they do.
Well, we get complacent, we get really complacent. And I got to tell you, I had velvet handcuffs for, 24 years. I was very well paid, put my kid through college. And that was the other thing. She was done when I made that shift. She had just finished college. So I didn't have that financial burden anymore either. So, but I think I would have said yes anyway, because it was just time. It was time. So that's how it happened.
So Dana the sculptor, why black bodies in bronze? Talk to us about that.
Well, the majority of the sculptures in the world are Eurocentric, at least in developed nations. They're Eurocentric, and they tell the story of white exceptionalism. And they're in spaces that are public and available to all of us, but statuary, because it takes up space, and that space is power, can exclude people and make people feel unwelcome. All of the statuary in Golden Gate Park is Eurocentric until Monumental Reckoning. 20 million people visit that park every year from all around the world. And yet the only story they see is a story of European descendants. And that's not right, because representation matters. It's so important, and it's important for me as a black woman that I can contribute to the health, the mental health, and self-confidence of young black people, of children, that they can see themselves, they can see their grandparents and their parents, and they can see, that picture of Obama and that young African-American boy who is in his office, and Obama leans down and the boy puts his hand on his hair. And he says, we have the same kind of hair. Your hair is just like my hair.
Yeah.
That's so important. And that's what Black Bodies in Bronze provides. And it tells stories of our greatness. And it tells stories of African descendants that go well beyond enslavement. And because we built this country.
That's for sure.
and I mean, the things that I've read about the plantation, the building of plantations. The carpenters would number the every part of the house, every piece of wood, so that they could take it back down in places like in South Carolina where it's super hot in the summer and humid, and then go rebuild it at at the lake area, where it's cooler. So I mean, that's genius.
It's
That's a
genius.
level of construction that doesn't exist today,
Yes,
right?
right.
I mean, but examples of stories like that, that that are not just invisible; they're intentionally buried,
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yes. Yes.
intentionally buried,
Yes.
and 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 we need them. We all need those stories. We need to have the 360-degree view of the telling of the truth of American history, and that's why I
So, do
started.
you believe that it does elevate all cultures to understand those stories, those hidden stories of Black people?
I do. I absolutely do. Because none of us know the truth of American history. And then I hope that it encourages other cultures to create their own
Yes, to do
stories
the same.
to
Yes.
live in the public realm. Because we're not told their stories either. And so we all suffer
Right.
for
Exactly.
this
Yes.
supremacy that uh, continues to take over the conversation in this country. Um, and
Mm-hmm.
it's it, the story is it's just a partial story, and so even in the telling of the Eurocentric story, it's not told in any context. It and it lessens. I think it lessens their story as well as ours. So
Yes. Yes. Yes.
people are trying to figure out what to do with the Confederate monuments that were intentionally created to harm people, well past the time in which the people being honored existed and lived. And I used to think, okay, give me a wrecking ball, and I'm going at them. I'll tear them all down.
Yeah.
But I don't feel that way anymore. I really think that we need to tell
Mm.
that story in context.
That, yes. Yes. Yes.
So,
Along with the other stories. Yeah.
exactly. And in Golden Gate Park, my hope is that this beautifully manicured park that is visited by so many people will see statuary and other art forms that are important to um, the other founding cultures here in the Bay Area: indigenous,
Yes.
native tribes, um,
Mm-hmm.
Chinese Americans, Japanese Americans. Um, I mean, California um, was not. Let me put this: California was as harmful to other cultures as the southern states in different ways. Um, we had sundowner towns here. We hung people here. We hung Mexican descendants. We hung Native Americans. We hung African descendants. We hung
Mm-hmm.
Asian descendants. And, we had the Chinese Exclusion Act here. The Oregon state, you couldn't even live in the state. You couldn't be in the state really if you were black. Literally, you couldn't own
Yes. That's
a
right.
stick in the state.
Yeah.
And that was written into the
Right.
Constitution of Oregon. I mean, so the history is deep and wide here on the West Coast, and a lot of people they
Yes.
don't believe that, but it's true.
Exactly. Don't know why we would make that up. But
Yeah,
people don't believe
right.
it when you tell them.
Yeah,
Exactly.
we're really lying about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why I do it.
So
I tell the story. They say if you're a writer, write what you know.
right.
What I know.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So when you took that weekend class, did you know that it was this that was calling you?
I had no idea.
You just knew that you had to do the work.
Mm-hmm. I knew I wanted to do the work, and in wanting to, I would have to, right? If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't had my hands in clay since I was a little girl. We all made those little ashtray, bowls and stuff.
Yeah, right. I did one of those.
Yeah,
Right.
and or little heart things, or but that was the extent of my working with that material, and I loved it. And I loved it because, as a painter, like I was getting my MFA in fine art painting, and because I really wanted to learn how to paint, right? I wanted to know the steps, and I wanted to know the materiality, and I had a desire to do that, and in painting you're working 2D, but you're trying to create the visual of a 3D, the same kind of impact as a 3D object, and and once I created something actually in 3D, I was like, oh, well, that makes it easy, right? I'm not pretending to make it in 3D. It is in 3D.
It is. Yeah.
And I loved it. I fell in love with it, and I'm still in love with it.
Can you take us, if it's possible, through what that process feels like? For instance, maybe if you use Huey Newton or maybe some other sculpture that you've done, like when you conceptualize it and when it was coming out of your hands, and what is that experience like?
Well, most of the people that I create are no longer alive. I mean, I am working on a sculpture right now of a man who is alive, and so he comes and sits with me. But Huey was difficult. First of all, he was physically beautiful. He was fine. And I used to come into it took me like 2 weeks to like calm down, because I have pictures of it. I have big photographs of Huey all around my studio. And I would come into my studio and be like, hi, Huey. How are you? Put a little lip gloss on and stuff,
Yeah,
right. And I really couldn't get past that physicality, that beauty. I had a hard time initially. And so once I got going on him, Frederica, his widow, who commissioned this, she would come by the studio, and I forget that I know where it's going, but right now it's not there yet, right? And so she came in at one point and she was like, "Oh Lord, what have I done? What have I done? It's never going to look like Huey, not And but I wasn't worried, but she really helped because she put her hands on his face, and that muscle memory, that because he was snatched from her life so violently, and she was so young, and but she would touch him and tell me that his lips were a little thicker here, or his cheek was a little higher, and that was incredible. And so helpful. But people just wanted to be here in this space and be with Huey. But it took a while. But then Huey showed up, and I mean to say he showed up in my studio. Huey was here. He was with me. My grandson knew it. My grandson talked about the Black Panther in my studio before I had even set up the clay. I kid you not. the morning I was going to tell everybody that I got this commission, because I don't tell people until I have it, locked down. I'm working on this, or I'm working on that. No.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was going to get up and tell them this the morning after Frederica and I decided to do a bust of him. And Joseph, my grandson, came into my bedroom, like he does every morning, and he said, "Grandma, there is a panther in your studio." And I said, "A panther?" He said, "Yes, Grandma, a black panther." I grabbed my phone. I started to text my daughter, and I said, "Is he been watching the Black Panther movie, or has he got a Black Panther game?" She said, "I don't even know where his iPad is." And that was the first time Huey showed up.
How old was your grandson?
4.
Mm-hmm.
So he's really close to that, right? In terms of being birthed and, coming from wherever it is we go to and come from.
Yeah.
And but Huey was in my studio. I mean, there would be times I would be so in the zone. I could feel him here. I could feel him. And I finally had to tell him, "Look, Huey," when he was done, I'm like, "You gotta go. You gotta go. We're gonna put you up. We're gonna take you home. We're gonna put you back in West Oakland." And his presence helped to guide me as well.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Was it a guiding presence that you were feeling of him? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I bought this place from Sculptors, and she was a figurative sculptor like me, and he was an abstract sculptor, and he worked with nature and recreating nature, natural materials, and he's here too, and because he wasn't planning on dying. He had a simple back surgery, and he died on the table in his 50s, and
wow.
I haven't felt him in a long time. I'm the only one who hasn't seen him. Akana, my daughter, has seen him. Joseph has seen him. Ryan, my son-in-law, has seen him. I think he knows that he would scare me if he showed up, But I have felt his presence.
You can just feel him. It's okay.
Yeah. So I'm good with that. This is ancestral work. It's I want to honor our ancestors so that they know that, not just from me, but that they have never been forgotten. That we so deeply appreciate the lives they lived in order for us to live. And
yes, exactly.
That's my work. And I have a love of all art, most art. I'll say most, because some of it, like if you go to a museum with me, sometimes I'm like, "The hell is that?" But
I know we just had that experience a few days ago. Morgan and I were like, "Huh?"
Yeah. So but my art form is really traditional. But we're human, and we love to see ourselves. We should be able to see ourselves out in the public world.
The technique that you used for his hair.
Oh, I can't tell you.
For Huey Newton's hair?
I can't tell you.
You can't tell me? You can't tell me? Okay.
I can't tell you. I was going to go grab my little tool. So first of all, a man named Diamond Ken, who Frederica called and said, "We're doing this bust of Huey, and Dana wants to know if you will come and look at his afro." Because Diamond Ken was like the rock star hairstylist to the Black Panther Party and and the people back in the day. And sure enough, he came, and he still had his swag in his 70s, right? And he put his hands on Huey's hair, and he looked at it, and and he shared with me that Huey liked to taper it down the backside, and he liked the front a little higher, and so it was awesome. But I made his afro because I can't get this into be an afro, right? I mean, it can look like a frizzy ball, but it has no form. And so I wanted someone to really put eyes on that for me. And so Diamond Kent did. But the tool I use is is the bottom of a broom. The bristles of a broom. The straw bristles of a broom. I cut them, I tape them all, or I put a rubber band around them, and I just jam all over their head.
Ah,
that's it.
Wow.
That's it.
Yeah, the hair fascinated me. Like the hair. Right. Wow, that's beautiful.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, I call it a secret, but because as a sculptor, like I feel like a problem solver. Like, because they have to stand, they have to literally stand. And until I started making public art, I never used an armature. So I built them all just from clay. And so there's that balance that you have to work with, and I don't know, and the different types of tools you can use to come up with a texture or just a way into a really tight space. And I love it. It's always a challenge. There's always a challenge, and each sculpture comes with different challenges, and those challenges are as unique as the person that I'm recreating.
So, step back a minute. Where'd you grow up? Who was the little girl that became this person? Like, can you see a thread? Because oftentimes when you look back, you can see the thread that led you to where you are. Do you see the thread?
I've never really thought about it. My mom and dad were like, they had a revolutionary love. My mom was white, born into an upper middle class family. My dad was black, born into a middle class black family. All of his sisters went to college. He started in college, but he didn't like it. And, he was an entrepreneur, and he was the maitre d' at the country club that my mom's family belonged to.
Oh, wow.
Scandal. And this is in Ohio. So my dad was part of the Great Migration and came up from Arkansas. And they lived in Akron. And they secretly married in Mexico in the 50s. And they just had this great love, obviously. I mean, to be an interracial couple anywhere, even in the North. I mean,
right.
The misogyny laws were still fully intact in most of the states, I think, at that time. But then my dad died. My parents were together for 7 years. And that became my mom's number. That 7 was, we would move every 7 years. We would pick up and go. And so, born in Ohio, moved to Indiana, then to Michigan. I am a product of the Midwest, let me tell you. And then when I graduated college, I drove to California. And as a total cliche girl, my little Volkswagen, stuffed to the brim with, all of my, meager belongings. I had $1,000. I had a yard sale. I got some money for graduating college, and I kid you not, I had a sign on my window that said "California or bust." I didn't have a job, and I moved straight to Venice Beach because I'm like, if I'm driving all this way, I'm going to live at the ocean. And
Yes.
I loved it. I loved it. And rented this little studio apartment. It had wood floors and a brick wall, and it was beautiful. And the rent was like $375 a month. I remember that back in
Oh,
'82,
please.
right?
Venice Beach.
Right. It was what was that street? Oh golly, it's the old Waldorf Astoria Hotel on Venice Beach, and it's at five. It'll come to me. And then I moved.
But the interesting thing about your story is recreating yourself.
Yeah.
Your family moved some way. You had to recreate.
Right.
Recreate. It's part of your history.
And I said I'm moving because I was either going to move to New York or to California. And this is my 18-year-old or 21-year-old mentality because I graduated college, so 21. If I move to New York, I have a car, so then I got to park it, and it's cold there. And if I run out of money and I have to live in my car, I'm going to freeze to death. But if I go to California, you don't have to pay for parking, and I could live in my car and shower at the beach. That was my thinking. If my kid came to me and said that to me, I would be mortified, right? But that was my rationale.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. And
I like it.
And I thought, and I can move to California because California it's the land of, milk and honey. Like, I could be anybody I want to be in California. In New York, you need to be somebody's child. You need to have gone to, this school in elementary, and this school at high school, and this college, university. I mean, I didn't do any of that, right? And I wasn't, I was my mom and dad's kid, but I wasn't somebody important's kid, right? And so I didn't have any entree. I did not have an entree into anything. And I thought, I'm going to go to California because you can be whoever you want to be in California. I could dye my hair purple and pick up a British accent, and no one would question me, right?
Exactly.
And that's kind of still the same way that it is today. So
it's still the same way today.
Except for it's prohibitively expensive to live here. It's outrageous. But so then, and the jobs I had, oh my God, I was so poor. I remember just eating apples and peanut butter.
Apples and peanut butter. That was nutritious, though.
And yummy.
That's good.
And yummy. So,
and yummy, right.
But I had my first latte when I came out here. And I got to tell you, so I moved to Venice Beach, and they have all these open grocery stores and stuff. Okay, you don't get fresh food like that back in you just didn't grow up like that in the Midwest. There were things I had never eaten.
No.
And when I had my first like fresh green beans, I'm like, they're crunchy and they're super green because we ate them out of a can, right?
Yeah, right.
I did not know. So, yeah. It was fun, and I'm so glad that I did it. And I lived all over LA. I lived at Venice Beach, then I moved up 2 blocks, and then where did I live? Then I got married. You remembered who, and moved up to the Hollywood Hills, and then we split up, and then moved to another place in the Hollywood Hills. I have moved a lot in my life.
Yeah.
And I don't. And I always
so
say,
what's next?
Well, I always say this is it. I'm not moving again. Yeah. You know what they say, never say never, right? I'll probably move again.
Never say never.
Although I love my place, and it's my studio as well as my home, and my family lives here, and other artists live here and create
Beautiful
here.
Place.
Thank you. And it's like a ship, like I fix one thing and something else breaks. but I don't care.
Wow.
I don't
That's
care.
home ownership, period.
Right, right. So I don't
So
know.
what's next? What's your next sculpture?
I have a
What's
couple.
on the horizon for
Um,
you?
so I'm finishing this bust of a man named James Bell, who he's retiring, and his employees love him so much they want a bust of him. I mean, and he comes and sits for me, and I end up doing nothing but talking to him. I mean, the first time he came, I wanted to get his head measurements and the whole thing, and take pictures. And I totally didn't do it. And I called him. I'm like, you need to come back because I didn't do anything that I was supposed to do. Were
Right,
you
that
here
we're
today?
supposed to do.
So I really like him. But the San Francisco Giants have commissioned me to do a sculpture of the first woman to play professional baseball with men. She wasn't on a league of her own, playing with other women. She played on the men's teams, the men's Negro League teams. Her name was Toni Stone, Toni with an I. Look her up, and and she was a badass. Like the guys did not want her there, and they would come at her, sure. with their spikes up at second base, and she was so good that she played over her career on 4 teams. She started with the San Francisco Sea Lions. There were the San Francisco Seals as well. There were 2 teams here. The Sea Lions were so poor as a team. Literally, they their uniforms, they couldn't afford to have someone make a seal. For the mascot, and so they found a bunch of old uniforms that had bears on them, and those were their uniforms. So they had a bear. Because I remember looking at it the first time, and I'm like, that can't be a seal. But anyway, and then she played for the Indianapolis Clowns, which were a big deal team, and she took over for Hank Aaron at second base when he went to the majors. So she's officially now, because MLB has decided that the Negro Leagues were really Major League Baseball. We knew that, they knew that.
Yes.
Now Major League Baseball knows that. But and so she's officially the first woman, and there ended up being 3 in total, the first woman to play professional baseball in this country.
And what year?
The late 40s and through 54. So
wow,
yeah,
this is beautiful because I've never heard of her.
Nope. And I can't wait for little girls and little boys to meet her and learn her story and know that truth. And that's the other beauty. I mean, whether you come upon a statue by accident or intentionally, the learning is the same, right? You're gonna learn something because you didn't learn this history in school, and we didn't learn it, and kids today are not learning it. Maybe a little bit more than we did, but we didn't learn anything. So that's really what I love about it, is that people walk away and go, I didn't know that, and then it encourages them, hopefully, to do more research in general.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because now I want to look up Toni Stone.
Yeah.
And see what I can find out about her.
And her family, she's still got family members, because this wasn't that long ago, right? And so...
right, exactly, yes.
So I met her niece and her great niece. Her niece was a Black Panther. The confluence of our histories, the world is so tiny, but they shared photographs of her not playing baseball. And she loved to get dressed up, and matching hat and gloves and a handbag and shoes. I love
the 40s. Yeah.
She was beautiful. She was beautiful. So, but when she played ball, she put on that cap, no makeup. She just did her thing. Can you imagine how courageous that she was?
Oh, extremely courageous.
Yeah.
Extremely courageous.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Were you familiar with her before they contacted you?
No.
Did you know who she was?
No. No. And they this is going up in a development next to the ballpark that the Giants are invested in.
Ah.
And and so she will be at the intersection of Tony Stone Street and Dr. Maya Angelou Way. And
Oh,
they actually said, which one do you want to do? And I'm like,
mm,
Maya's going to have a sculpture here in San Francisco, in the Bay, fairly soon. An artist is going to create a piece that will sit in front of the public library in San Francisco. Her name is Lava Thomas, so she's going to do that. And I'm like, she's getting one already. So Tony
yeah,
needs one,
right, right.
especially right next to the
Yeah,
ballpark.
people need to know about her.
Hello. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So
Yeah, that was easy, huh?
so that's my next one. I'm working with Gallaudet University to create a story about the first cohort of Black deaf students based on the lawsuit filed by a woman named Louise Miller back in 1952. I'm doing a conceptual piece that will be a part of a legacy. It's an entire development that they're doing for Gallaudet. But another sculptor, a friend of mine, Brantley Cadet, who's amazing. He did the sculpture of Jackie Robinson for the Dodgers. It's
Mm,
phenomenal. And so
mm.
he's doing the sculpture of Louise Miller and her son Kenneth, and then I'm doing a conceptual piece that honors the first cohort of Black deaf students at Gallaudet. And the intention is so honorable, but the truth of the history is very sad. That
Mm.
all the work that Louise Miller did to get her children, three of whom are deaf and one is hearing, to go to this school, and all the other young Black deaf students, that they honored the lawsuit to the letter of the law, but not the spirit. And they actually
Mm.
they did a huge harmful disservice to the first cohort of Black deaf students, to the point where I can't even get information from Gallaudet about them. Like, I got their names.
Mm.
I don't know their ages. I don't know what grades they were.
Mm.
I don't know how long they were there. I don't know how old they were. I mean, and they weren't taught anything. They weren't even taught sign language. So that first year was really detrimental to their academic lives. In fact, none of them went on
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
higher education, not one. And many of them are still alive, and it's a travesty.
Mm.
So the conceptual piece, which started out as just like a marker in honor of those students, now has to tell a story of negligence.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and they're
Yeah.
as far as I know, they're good with it. So, but that's the truth of the story, and if they want to be honest, then that has to come out. So I'm representing those students with chairs, with hard little wooden
Mm.
chairs that are in
Mm.
many are in
Mm.
disrepair. Like, I'll have books with chunks torn out of them that lay on the seat.
Mm.
They weren't allowed to, they didn't have a PE class, they weren't allowed to play sports, they didn't have recess. I mean, so they didn't play hopscotch or jump rope or
Right.
or foursquare or tetherball. They didn't play any of that because they went to lunch, and then they came back to their classroom. Their teachers were Black and had to have a higher level of education than all of the other teachers. Most of their teachers were master's degrees, and they were all ostracized and kept apart, segregated from the other students. I mean, it's a hell of a story. So I'm doing that. Do I have anything else? Oh, Well, it's not in writing yet, but there's the first African American professor um, in the top tier universities in this country, the Harvards, the Yales, the Seven Sisters,
Mm-hmm.
the Cal system, the first black professor in that system. I'm going to do a bust of, and he was at Cal, and so I'm excited.
What is his name?
His name is Joseph Geer, Gier, Professor Joseph Geer.
Wow.
And this group of and it's coming. He taught. It's the School of Electrical Engineering and Computer Science, and they want to honor him, and they want other people to know that their school, that this department was, this was in the 50s, 40s and 50s, and he had patents and the whole thing. I mean, and he, if you think about it, they didn't hire black people because the students were all white. And the students,
right.
They held their professors in high esteem. So this black man was their superior in all ways. And but he had to earn it, right?
Well, of course.
Right? But he did.
Absolutely.
And he invested in his students, in their growth, and he's just as well known in the system as being that professor as he is for being, an African descendant. But it was he had high blood pressure. He died at the age of 50, I think. Yeah.
Oh.
So it's not in
I
writing
have this
yet,
image. I have this image of this beautiful book that is about you and these beautiful images of your sculptures, but it's this history lesson. It's like this history lesson of these things that everyone needs to know and understand, and the beauty of what it is that you're bringing. And my heart just is so opened by you and what you're teaching, and the creativity that comes out of you is amazing.
I don't think I could have done it at any other time in my life. This is happening when it's supposed to happen. And I really believe that if you have something in you, it's going to come out. Whatever your gift is, it's going to come out. And it will come out when the time is right. And if you allow it, Dana. A lot of people just don't allow it. A lot of people, maybe a majority of people, don't allow it because but that's not what I do. This is what I do. Or the biggest thing I hear is, well, I don't know how to do that. But you don't know how to do. You take a step. You listen. You follow. Somebody says, hey, I'm going to take this class. I don't want to drive by myself. You're like, oh, okay. You didn't know what you were being guided to, but you were willing to say, oh, okay. You didn't say, well, no, I can't do that because, that's not on my calendar for today. You know what I'm saying? Right.
A lot of people are just that wound up and that unwilling to shift and make change and flow. So
you did the same thing, Fran.
Do not make... Well, yeah.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, I mean, we had these professional lives. We wore suits every day, and heels, and, and we wanted to run the world, and we found out, well, that's not very fun.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
That's not. I don't like that.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But there was money to be made.
How do I get out of here?
Right, and there were great challenges within it as well. Like I'm queen of the world today. I just closed a $2 million deal or whatever. Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's seductive. That's seductive.
Yeah, it is seductive. It's quite seductive. But But then when something else is calling you, I was at, because I've said that so much creativity has come out of the pandemic situation, that so much creativity. And so I just was saying that to a person I was having dinner with a couple of weeks ago, and our waiter came over and I said, "So tell me what creativity has come out of you since COVID." And he said, "Oh my God, I used to do something at some company in San Diego, or Seattle. In Seattle," he said, "and I left and I bought a camera and I came to Los Angeles and now I'm doing fashion photography." It's like, good for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm supplementing
Right.
that shift by waiting tables. Big deal.
By waiting on you at this restaurant.
Right,
Exactly.
But we also have to drop our need to be perceived as important out in the world, right?
That's right.
Like, I drive a truck because I need a truck. I love my truck, don't get me wrong. But, I don't, that whole, how am I looking to the outer world? That stops a lot of people too.
It does. Absolutely.
Right?
It does.
Like, I will go out of this house like a mess. Because I got to get to the store that sells clay before they close. I don't, and I'm going to run by the grocery store on the way back. I don't care. Right. I don't care.
Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. And and if it's a problem for someone, well, then that's their problem.
That's their problem.
Right? But I wasn't always like that. I cared what people thought, and now I don't give an AF. I just can't. Because there's not enough time for that.
No.
There's not enough time.
Doesn't even make sense.
No. But the world is built on hoping that people feel the need to live up to other people's standards.
That's exactly right.
Because then they hold you down to that. They hold you down to that. And
which is why social media is filled with lies.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's only going to get worse.
I know your life. Your life doesn't look like that. Yeah.
I didn't even know how to turn the filter on my phone. Like, I see some of these women, I'm like, well, how does she look that good? But
right, exactly.
I know. You know what? Because really, here's the thing. So my mom, God rest her soul, you know my mom. You met my mom, right?
Yes, I did.
Yes, you did. So,
girl, please, yeah.
Yeah, you know my mom. So my mom has lied about her age. Well, lied about her age her whole life.
Yeah.
And she would want me to lie about my age. She would be like, if anyone asks you, you tell them you're just 32. Mom, I'm 45. Right? Like, I'm not fooling anybody here.
Right.
And so, but she lied about her age really until the day she couldn't lie about it anymore. And her husband knew her age. She thought she was fooling him. And and what I want to say about that is, like, when you're younger, you can get away with that. But when you're younger, you don't lie younger. You lie older. Like, I'm 32 right. when I'm really just 24, right?
Right.
But at some point, you cross the meridian. You cross that line where if you lie about your age younger, people will be like, ooh.
I know, right?
I wonder what happened. Right? I wonder if she had a serious illness or something a few years back. I mean, because you're not fooling anybody. So it's just
be honest.
Silly. Yeah.
Just be honest. Yeah. About everything.
Exactly. Because it's not a thing. It's not a thing.
Right. It's not a thing.
And the only people we should be trying to impress is the God within us. Right? And living up to the ideal.
On that note, that right there.
God.
The God within us. Because that is what you demonstrate all the time, Dana. In all these shifts and changes that you've made in your life, you demonstrate impressing the God within you, aligning with the God within you, allowing the expression of the God within you. And I thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for who you are. Thank you for taking time out of your busy hands
Girl, I ain't doing
to
nothing
be
right
with
now.
us.
I'm relaxing. I love you, and
Good.
I am so
Good. I
grateful
love
for
you
you,
too.
and I am so
Mm,
impressed that you have rebuilt your life in
mm,
myriad ways that are beautiful and help other people,
mm,
and
mm,
are it's sweet. It's really it's
mm.
beautiful and it's sweet
Thank you.
and it's soft. You know, it's a soft landing,
Mm,
and we lived in
mm,
such a
mm,
hard
mm.
world. You know,
Woo. Oh, people don't even understand. They don't.
no,
They don't
no.
understand.
And so I love that you have built this soft landing for yourself,
Mm,
and you're here to magnify God too. I see that.
hmm That's my
I see
intention.
that.
Absolutely.
Yes,
Dana
you're doing it.
King, thank you because we need what you do and who you
Mm,
are. I appreciate you.
thank you. I appreciate you.